Hi everyone, I'm Casey, and in this video I wanted to talk about Tencent, why I personally think it is such a great stock and company to own in the medium to long term, and also possibly in the short term as well, while investors aren't too happy about Chinese companies. I personally think those worries will be shaken off in the medium to long term, and so right now, personally might be a steal on getting the stock while it is somewhat low. I made a recent video on Alibaba as well talking about this, but I wanted to dive into what Tencent is for those who may not know, what companies they own, and lastly, and most importantly, why the company is growing so fast. They currently are growing like 30+% year over year, which is pretty insane. What segments are growing that fast of theirs? I kind of have their most recent quarterly financials I'll go over with you all, and my general overall outlook. So let's dive right in. So first and foremost, kind of one of their biggest notable holdings for anybody who may be familiar with the video game industry, Tencent owns 100% of Riot Games, which is the creator of League of Legends. They also recently created a video game called Valorant, which has also been pretty popular, and so by association, Tencent owns 100% of both of those. Secondly, it owns 84% of Supercell, which is the creator of Clash of Clans, which is one of the biggest mobile video games out there. So I personally am not that interested in video games anymore, but I think they're a phenomenal investment opportunity, and I'll get into that later. They also own 7.5% of Spotify. The reason why they own that is because they own a company called Tencent Music, which is basically like the Chinese Spotify, and Spotify and Tencent swapped 7.5% of each to each other. They also own WeChat, which is one of the biggest messaging apps in China and Asia. It recently got banned here in the United States by the Trump administration. I wouldn't be surprised if the Biden administration ends up revoking that, which would be a huge positive catalyst for Tencent, but most importantly, it really didn't affect Tencent's revenue at all by it because it really wasn't used in the United States that much anyway, but a huge, very important holding of theirs. So they also own tons and tons of other companies. You know, I shouldn't say necessarily own, but they have 10, 15, 20% investments in all these different video game manufacturers, all these different Chinese social media companies. And if you kind of just want on your own want to go Google it, it's a crazy long list, and they own a ton. They are a huge Chinese company that has their foot in almost everything. So now that you've got a brief overview of what Tencent is, what they own, where their revenue is coming into, I want to dive into their financials and kind of give you all the real proof of why this stock, in my opinion, is such a great company to own, and especially for the long term. The presentation I'm gonna go over is their Q3 earnings. I'll have a link in the video description below for how to view it yourself, but I'll be having the slides go across the screen as I read over them and show you all how impressive this company is. Okay, so these are the financial highlights of their most recent quarter, and this is just overall so impressive. So year over year, their total revenue was 29%, which is pretty crazy. They, of course, have benefited a lot from COVID, just like any e-commerce or tech company has, or video game company has too. But for instance, as I've mentioned in my Activision video, I personally think a lot of this growth is here to stay, maybe not all of it, but I do think a lot of these people who were exposed to video games and really got into them this year during COVID because sports were canceled and other things like that, I do think a lot of that profit and revenue is going to be retained. So if we kind of dive into it, their value-added services, which basically is kind of the heart of the business, the social networks such as WeChat and others, and the online games. Online games grew almost 45% year over year, which is what I was talking about with COVID, which is crazy. Social networks, 28.9% year over year. Their online advertising grew 16% over a year, which is pretty impressive because online advertising somewhat took a hit due to COVID. It was still resilient in certain areas, but as we can see, because 16% is pretty impressive. But you know, you can see media, for instance, went down 1.4%, and social and others went up 20%. So their fintech and business services, which is also a pretty exciting segment of their company. They have some investments in clearly fintech and other business services, and that grew 24%. And others went down 29 or 30%, considering that is only a very, very small percent of their overall business. I don't even actually know what that is, but I don't think we really need to worry about that too much, because if you look at the total of gross profit, going up 33.4% for the whole year is insane. That is just very, very, very impressive. A company that is as big as Tencent, growing that fast year over year, that large, is something that I personally think as an investor you want to jump on board and be a part of. So I wanted to go over a few more slides where we basically can go into depth on all that financial information. So first off, the value-added services. As we know, the growth from in-game item sales and live streaming drove revenue up 29% year over year and 6% quarter to quarter. What else is pretty impressive here? Online games revenue increased 45%, as we know. This is what's pretty cool, which is attributable to the Clash of Clans, for instance, and the other mobile games. Total smartphone games revenue grew 61% year over year. That's insane. PC client games revenue was stable year over year, as increased revenue from League of Legends globally and Valorant offset and decrease from, I'm not sure what DNF revenue is, clearly some other game. But so basically the client games revenue was, the growth was consistent with what it has been. So there's not too many more slides I want to go over, as really all we care about as investors is the financials, which I went over in the beginning. That one slide I just went over I thought was pretty interesting with the value-added services, mentioning the mobile games. But the other thing I also wanted to mention was their fintech and businesses services slide. And again, I'm gonna have the link down below for anybody who wants to go through all of these slides themselves, because there are definitely some I'm not showing. I'm just kind of bringing to attention the most, in my opinion, important or relevant one. But their fintech services, total payment volume increased over 30% year over year, as commercial payment, daily active users, and transaction value per user grew robustly. Wealth management customers increased over 50% year over year as more payment users managed their cash on their platform. Really exciting, because Tencent does definitely have investments clearly in fintech and financial services or business services, but this is pretty exciting because it's growing a lot for them and becoming more and more important. I mean, them making 33 billion in a quarter is pretty impressive. I didn't want to spend too much time going over these slides because it's kind of slower, and you know, in my past videos, like going over investor presentation slides for SPACs is super exciting because there's so much information in there. But the main key part of this video was going over their financials, showing you all, bringing to your attention if you weren't aware, how much Tencent is growing, and how I just personally think all of the things that they are invested in, fintech, video games primarily, social networks, all of those, in my opinion, are going to continue to grow rapidly, especially video games. I think a lot of this growth is going to be retained by them in the medium to long term, because it exposed a lot of people to these services that they may not have used as fast as they were needed to because of COVID. So right now, Tencent is trading in $80 range, and I easily see this stock being over $100 within the next 6 months or longer, but eventually this stock will easily be over $100. I don't see any reason why this company won't continue to grow, and I personally just think this is something that if you're not going to consider investing in, just definitely keep on your watch list and your radar. I personally am really excited about it, and I think because of all of the worries with China, this is a time that could be a good deal to get in on it. So definitely at least, you know, take a look, check it out. I personally think it is a pretty good deal right now for a relatively safe company that's growing crazy fast, similar to Alibaba. So this video has definitely gone on a lot longer than I wanted it to, but thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and you like future videos. And if you want me to do a follow-up video that is long and in-depth, I'd be happy to do that. I think I'm gonna do one on Alibaba as it was requested. So thank you all so much again. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching.